ka, Nene.
Hi, my name's John Corden, and as an avid outdoorsman, you need to at all times be ready to tackle nature. And that's why I recommend this life hack. If you forget your wellies, use any sort of polythene bag, obviously. Today I wanted to talk about some ideas that I've been having about guitar and what I think is kind of important that we don't lose sight of as guitarists. I think there's a tendency to kind of be a little bit tunnel vision and overly focused on certain things, and so I wanted to just talk about some of these ideas from my point of view and what I think, basically telling myself not to lose sight of. So one of these things is that we're on a trajectory of improvement, and so for instance I don't particularly think my timing's where it should be or where I want it to be, and so I work on my timing quite a lot, and or have done and continue to do so in some ways. And I think in my mind, like, there's this goal of there's a person who plays in time all the time and it sounds really good all the time, and I'm here, I'm not at that goal, but I think it's worth trying to kind of bear in mind that timing in and of itself is like a moving thing anyway, and there's not a perfect timing and there's not a perfect human, and so even with something like timing there's not a need to nail everything all the time, if that makes sense. So it's okay to have these small imperfections. That's part of what being human is, and if that's not what we wanted, we could just quantize everything, and that would be a different thing to real music, if you like. And I think that applies to a lot of other things, you know, like we could really try and specifically focus on making a technique perfect and stuff, but as we get better at stuff, I think basically those goalposts just move. So the better my timing, or as my timing improves, I notice smaller things more so, if that makes sense. Don't beat yourself up about some of this stuff too much. I think the important thing is to try and enjoy your time on the instrument as it is. And so this comes to sort of point 2, where I read things online, people saying, how much should I practice, or how do I find time to practice, or I can't motivate myself to practice, or, have you got tricks to help motivate me to want to practice more? And I think, depending on whether you're a professional musician or someone who plays guitar for fun, or both of those things, or in between, I think the important thing, more than anything else, is to enjoy the time that you do spend with the guitar. And the thing of, I play guitar, and some people distinguish between playing and practice, and people might say, I just noodle and I play the same things over and over and over again. Myself personally, I kind of think any time spent playing the guitar hopefully will bring out something new, especially if you're slightly conscious of it, and perhaps you might have one thing that you've got at the back of your mind during a playing session. So even if it's like, I'm going to try and place phrases on the and of 2 at various points through this practice session, things like that, little things to maybe give you some conscious thing to focus on, but still trying to have a good time. I think that's the more important thing. Like guitar might be something you do for 30 minutes, an hour once you get home from work. You don't necessarily want to be sat down studying 7 positions of the melodic minor scale. Perhaps you might just want to sit down and play some blues, or just play some chilled music. And I think that's as valuable, as sitting down and really bashing yourself over the head with something that you thought you should practice. Because you should also just be, trying to enjoy time playing your instrument. Point three, I think, is that as much as we can focus on things like, legato playing or alternate picking and sweep picking, all these things, when it comes down to actually being a professional guitarist, most of us are going to end up playing someone else's material, and I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that probably 95% of it won't include aggressive sweep picking chops, it won't include aggressive alternate picking chops. Most of it will be rhythm based, depending on what you're doing, but so if you're playing in a wedding band, most of that is going to be rhythm based, and so I think it's worth bearing in mind that you're going to probably at some point, if you do become a professional guitarist or in some capacity start playing music with others, you're going to have to start to learn repertoire, you're going to have to learn music, and for me there's a lot of Motown in there that I've had to learn, a lot of soul, a lot of rock, all sorts of different varieties of music. A lot of jazz as well is what I personally chose to start learning a lot of. I think that's a good way to kind of break yourself out of that tunnel vision focus. Now there are times when potentially, like in wedding season, I might have to learn 2 or 3, 4 different set lists, and that sort of takes over from anything that I wanted to do that was kind of self-improving, or stuff that was perhaps like focused on improving an element of technique or jazz learning. But I think without some of that repertoire learning, I think it's easy to just worry about things that actually, when it comes to playing music with other people, don't matter too much. I don't think anyone else in a band is going to recognise whether you're sweep picking or legato or alternate picking a line or economy picking. None of that technique matters to anyone but another guitarist. I think what people will notice is if you don't know songs, and if your timing is kind of awful, or if your tone is awful. So those things are generally what people, I think, are looking for when they, and reliability, and that you don't cancel on gigs and that sort of stuff. But so it's worth bearing in mind that learning material kind of is a real fundamental thing that you're going to need if you do want to become a professional musician, and I think is also a way that you can enjoy the guitar anyway. So without knowing material and stuff, and this is sort of what plagued some of my early jazz noodlings, I didn't really know any standards, and as a result I didn't feel like I was playing jazz particularly. I could be practicing over a jazz backing track and reading the changes and stuff, but I'm not really playing jazz per se. I'm just watching chords go past, and in some cases I've never even really listened to the tune, and so I don't know what that song went like anyway. I didn't really know who wrote it. But so there's a big period of that early playing which wasn't anchored to anything that made sense. So in that example, in the jazz world, I think it's useful to always tie something back to where it originally came from. So if you're learning Autumn Leaves for whatever reason, go and listen to Autumn Leaves. Don't just sit there with a lead sheet and play through it, etc. So learning material will be essential at some point, so it's probably worth starting to do it now if you haven't already. And I think it is worth definitely follow yourself down rabbit holes. So you might be really into Nirvana, you might be really into Iron Maiden, Dream Theater, things like this. I think there's a lot of people will go through those phases. You might be Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, or I don't know, the 1975, but allow yourself to develop those interests and follow yourself through those interests. And so I think it'd be really useful, for instance, if you learned like a whole album of material, whoever's it was, it might be Oasis, it might be anything, but to learn whole chunks of repertoire, I think, is the important thing, so that these other things that you're practicing as a guitarist have some context. If you are one of these people that is struggling to find the motivation to practice or pick up a guitar, so I can say for me personally, there's never a day goes by where I don't want to pick up a guitar. So I can't really say I sympathise with it particularly or empathise, but I think it's worth kind of bearing in mind, are you kind of setting these goals that are a little bit kind of pressurising? Or are you thinking about like practice as being this arduous thing that is got to be a certain way? Or are you just thinking, I want to play the guitar? I think if it's the second option, where I just want to have my hands playing a guitar for a bit, I think that's a lot more likely to result in you picking up a guitar than if you think, oh, every time I pick up a guitar I need to be learning something new, or I need to be pushing myself forwards. I think that potentially might be a bit of a pressurizing mindset. So those are just my thoughts on this stuff. On this channel you'll see there's like a bunch of stuff where I'm following my interests. So on Mondays it's breaking down some sort of lick, whether it's a legato lick or a jazz lick or whatever. On Fridays I'll break down some chords, like yesterday it was some Alan Holdsworth stuff which I can't play. And then Sundays it's kind of following my kind of jazz interests, and oftentimes that'll be showing you how I think about a certain song and that sort of stuff. And then the rest of the week is whatever I fancy doing, and a lot of it every morning I'm just improvising some music. And I think that is what helps to keep things fresh for me, is that spontaneity and just enjoying the guitar is a big part of what I do. So hopefully that kind of comes across a bit, and I think those were some things and thoughts that were going through my head, so I want to just let them out. Let me know in the comments if you've got any thoughts on this stuff. If you're someone who finds it difficult to motivate yourself to pick up the guitar. And then another question, does it matter if you don't pick up the guitar for a couple of days or a week? Ultimately, if you don't have to pick up a guitar because it's not your job to do so and you don't have to learn loads of material, I think it's fine for you to let periods of time go by where you don't play the guitar, and then you come back to it at another stage where it's kind of a passion again. I think that's okay. So there's kinds of seasons to this stuff as well, I guess. But yeah, let me know what you think, and thank you for stopping by. If this was interesting or sparked some thoughts, let me know in the comments, and if you could like and subscribe, that'd be really cool. Cheers.